r/NoSleep. The living room that never ends. I've been trying to leave my living room for hours now. I don't know exactly how long it's been. I lost track somewhere around the 5th or 6th time I found myself back on my couch, staring at the same four walls, same dimly lit lamp, and the same window to nowhere. Each time I get up to leave, thinking this time I'll make it out, only to end up right back where I started, sitting on that couch with the TV on mute, but nothing playing on it. It started out so ordinary. I was just sitting here, watching the news before bed, when the power flickered off for a second. Everything went dark, but a moment later, the lights blinked back on, and I stood up to get a glass of water. That's when I noticed it for the first time, the strange, heavy silence filling the air. I ignored it, went to open the door to the kitchen, and stepped forward, expecting to feel the familiar kitchen tile under my feet. But no, my feet met the same rough carpet of my living room floor. I turned around, confused, and looked back at the couch. It sat there, bathed in the dull yellow glow of the same floor lamp, its bulb buzzing faintly in the silence. I turned back to the door. It was shut again. Convinced I'd imagined it, I tried again, twisting the handle and stepping through with more determination. But once again, I found myself standing in my living room. Now I could feel my pulse start to rise, my throat dry. I paced back and forth, trying to convince myself I was just tired, that I'd zoned out, maybe had too much caffeine. But when I checked my phone, which had been on the coffee table in front of me, the screen read 11:58 p.m., the exact same time it read when I'd first tried to leave. I called my friend, Alex, hoping he'd have some rational explanation. I described my situation to him, his responses punctuated by that frustrated tone he always got when he thought I was messing with him. He tried to joke it off at first, saying, "Maybe it's a sign you need to redecorate, man." But as I kept describing each time I tried to leave, he went silent, then told me to just hang tight and that he'd be over in a few minutes. I set my phone down and looked at the door. I didn't know what I was waiting for, exactly, Alex, maybe, or some sudden snap back to reality that would let me walk out like nothing had happened. The minutes ticked by. I could feel the room closing in on me, the air thicker with each breath. I tried the door again, hoping I'd finally break free. But the moment my hand left the handle, I was back, sitting on the couch, my heart racing. I heard a faint knock on the front door, and my heart leapt. I ran to it, threw it open, hoping to see Alex standing on the other side. But the room stretched out in front of me, empty. The same walls, the same couch, the same clock reading 11:58 p.m. as if time had frozen. The knock came again, but this time it was louder, more insistent. I called out, "Alex, if that's you, say something." There was silence, but something else lingered there, a presence just beyond the reach of my senses. It felt as though eyes were watching me from the shadows pooling in the corners of the room. I must have fallen asleep, or at least I think I did, because the next thing I knew, I jolted awake to the sound of my own voice echoing in the room, whispering something I couldn't quite make out. I looked around, but no one was there. The lights flickered again, casting strange, elongated shadows across the walls, and I felt a sharp, piercing headache right between my eyes. I tried to stand up, only to find myself back on the couch, that same headache thrumming through my skull. I stared at my hands, my fingers trembling as I clutched the fabric of my pants, trying to ground myself, trying to wake up. Another knock on the door, this time, softer, almost a tap. I hesitated, fear clawing at my gut, but I got up anyway, each step feeling heavier than the last. The door creaked open, revealing the same empty room, but there was something different. A faint, familiar smell wafted in, a scent from my childhood home. My mom's lavender perfume. I knew it wasn't possible, she lived hours away and never visited unannounced, but the smell grew stronger, filling the room, suffocating me with memories and whispers of long-gone days. I backed away, shaking, but stumbled as I hit the couch again. As I sat, trembling, I realized that everything around me had shifted ever so slightly. The colors were just a bit dimmer, the lamp a bit more tarnished, the air colder. I checked my phone, but the battery was dead. I swore I'd just charged it before I sat down. Desperation clawed at me, my mind racing through possible explanations. Maybe I was having a breakdown, maybe this was some kind of prank, but a deep-seated dread told me it was something much worse. The walls began to close in. The room seemed smaller now, more compact, the air colder and sharper against my skin. I could feel something pressing on my shoulders, as if the very weight of the room was sinking onto me. I screamed, shouting for Alex, for anyone who might hear me. I threw myself at the door, pounding against it, the wood solid and unyielding. I could feel the weight of eyes on me, those unseen presences growing closer, whispering just outside the range of my hearing. I sat down, feeling the chill seep into my bones. My head throbbed with every heartbeat, every thudding pulse of fear echoing through me. I tried closing my eyes, willing myself to wake up, to break free, but every time I opened them, I was right back here, in this same endless living room. My phone buzzed, a miracle, considering it had been dead moments before. I snatched it up, my heart pounding as I saw a single new message. It was from myself. The message read, "There is no way out." And that's when I felt the hand on my shoulder. Cold, skeletal fingers gripping me with unnatural strength. I wanted to scream, but no sound came out. The room seemed to tilt, the walls twisting as I felt myself being pulled backward, down into a cold, silent abyss. And then, I was back on the couch, staring at the door. I slumped back, defeated, trying to hold on to any last shred of sanity. I could hear a soft humming in the air, a monotonous drone that grew louder with each passing second, suffocating me with its intensity. It was like a voice, something old and vast, murmuring words I couldn't understand but that filled me with an overwhelming sense of dread. The air grew heavier, pressing down on my chest. I struggled to breathe, gasping, clawing at my throat, but there was no relief. The hum became a deafening roar, drowning out every thought, and I felt myself slipping away, losing my grip on reality. Just when I thought I couldn't take it any longer, the sound stopped, leaving a profound, eerie silence. I looked around, and the room had changed. The walls were darker, cracked and peeling, and the lamp was flickering, casting shadows that seemed to dance and writhe in the corners of my vision. I got up, shivering, my hands shaking as I made my way to the door. I reached for the handle, feeling an inexplicable pull, as though something was beckoning me, calling me forward. I opened the door, stepping into the darkness beyond, and felt a chill seep into my bones. I walked, blind and disoriented, my footsteps echoing in the void. After what felt like hours, I saw a faint light in the distance and stumbled towards it, desperate for any sign of escape. As I drew closer, the light grew brighter, revealing my living room. I was back, standing in front of the couch, my hands numb with cold. I fell to my knees, defeated, unable to comprehend the nightmare I was trapped in. The clock still read 11:58 p.m., its second hand ticking endlessly in place, frozen in time. I collapsed on the couch, feeling a profound, crushing despair settle over me. I was alone, trapped in an endless loop, doomed to spend eternity in this place that had become a prison. And then I heard a voice. It was faint, barely audible, but unmistakably my own. "There is no way out." I looked around, panic clawing at my mind, but there was no one there. The room was empty, silent, and still. I sat there, staring at the door, waiting, knowing deep down that I would never leave. The hours, or maybe days, continued to melt away, yet I still hadn't made it out of this impossible prison. Every attempt to reach the door, every inch toward escape, only thrust me back onto the couch, my body feeling more worn and hollow with each cycle. My mind ached from the torment of endlessly replaying my escape attempts, each one feeling like a fresh hope cruelly crushed. I started taking mental notes, a desperate attempt to maintain some shred of sanity. "Don't look at the clock," I told myself each time, "it's only going to say 11:58. But even with that resolve, I found myself staring at its frozen face, every repetition an agonizing reminder of my situation. The hum returned, a low vibration, droning in the distance and worming its way into my ears. It was just barely audible, more a feeling than a sound, but it grew each time I noticed it. It was only then that I realized it wasn't the room closing in around me but something from outside. An awareness of something, lurking just beyond sight, waiting and watching. It was playing with me, savoring every inch of my struggle. Eventually, I felt a strange, creeping calm, like I was drifting underwater. Maybe if I just sat here, if I stopped trying to leave, it would release me. Maybe I was simply dreaming, and if I settled down, accepted the nightmare, I'd finally wake up. So I did exactly that. I sank back into the couch, let my head fall against its back, closed my eyes, and just listened. The hum grew, an aching throb in my temples, until it seemed to pulse inside my chest, a disorienting pressure that made every breath painful. Then, in the silence, I heard something else, words, whispered in a voice just barely familiar. It was my own, faint and distorted, like a forgotten memory resurfacing. Remember. It's always here. Always. A jolt of terror shot through me, and my eyes snapped open. The room had changed again, though it took me a moment to realize it. The familiar couch and walls remained, but everything else had become warped, subtly wrong. The colors were duller, with shadows stretching in impossible directions. The clock read 11:58, but the second hand wasn't frozen anymore, it ticked backward. I wanted to run, to tear through the door with every ounce of my strength, but something held me back, a compulsion I couldn't explain. I tried to scream, but my voice came out in a whisper, barely a croak. A part of me knew no one could hear, not Alex, not anyone. I was utterly alone. The knock on the door returned, louder this time, reverberating through the room. It wasn't gentle anymore, it was an insistent pounding, desperate and relentless, shaking the walls around me. I stumbled to my feet, torn between fear and a desperate urge to know who, or what, was out there. As I reached the door, it flew open of its own accord, revealing nothing. An empty, featureless hallway stretching endlessly in both directions, bathed in a harsh, unnatural white light. "Hello?" I whispered, my voice trembling. Silence. Then, almost imperceptibly, I heard the faintest echo of footsteps, coming from both directions. They grew louder, faster, until they were nearly deafening. But no one was there, just footsteps, pounding in perfect unison, racing toward me. I slammed the door shut, my heart pounding as I backed away, only to find myself stumbling into the couch again. I fell onto it, paralyzed with fear, my mind racing as I stared at the door, waiting for it to burst open. But it didn't. The footsteps faded, leaving only the silence and the incessant hum that seemed to fill every corner of the room. I looked around, desperate for any change, any hint that I could escape this prison. That's when I noticed the photograph on the wall, one I'd never seen before. It showed a room identical to mine, down to the last detail, except the person sitting on the couch wasn't me. It was someone else, a stranger with hollow eyes and a vacant expression. But as I stared, the figure in the photograph moved, their gaze shifting until they were looking directly at me. My blood ran cold, my body frozen in place. I wanted to look away, but I couldn't. Something about that gaze held me in place, an unspoken understanding passing between us. The figure opened their mouth, as if to speak, but no words came out. Instead, a single tear rolled down their cheek, a silent plea that filled me with a deep, inexplicable sadness. I reached out, my hand trembling, and touched the photograph. The surface was cold, like ice, and as my fingers brushed against it, I felt a sudden, violent pull, dragging me forward. The room blurred around me, colors bleeding together until I was plunged into darkness, weightless and disoriented. When the world came back into focus, I was standing in a different room. It looked like mine but distorted, like a dream version of reality. The walls were covered in strange, incomprehensible symbols, scrawled in a language I couldn't recognize. The air was thick with the scent of lavender, but it was overpowering, sickly sweet and nauseating. A figure stood in the corner, shrouded in shadow. I couldn't make out any details, but I could feel their gaze piercing through me, their presence filling the room with an oppressive weight. They stepped forward, their movements slow and deliberate, and I saw their face, a twisted, nightmarish reflection of my own, contorted with an expression of pure malice. I stumbled back, panic overtaking me as I realized I was trapped in this twisted reflection of my own life, a nightmare that had become all too real. The figure spoke, their voice a distorted echo of my own, and the words sent a chill down my spine. "There is no escape. Not for you. Not for any of us." I backed away, my heart pounding as I reached for the door. But when I turned the handle, it dissolved in my hand, leaving me with nothing but an empty frame and a hollow sense of despair. The figure stepped closer, their eyes dark and empty, their hand reaching out toward me. I could feel its cold, skeletal fingers brush against my skin, and a wave of darkness washed over me, filling every corner of my mind, drowning out all hope and reason. And then, just as quickly as it had begun, the darkness receded, and I was back on the couch, staring at the familiar walls of my living room. The clock read 11:58, its second hand ticking backward. I slumped back, defeated, a hollow shell of the person I once was. I could feel the presence of that twisted figure lurking just beyond my vision, a constant reminder of the fate that awaited me. The hum returned, louder this time, filling the room with its oppressive weight. I closed my eyes, trying to shut it out, but it only grew louder, a relentless, unending drone that echoed in my mind. I don't know how long I sat there, lost in the darkness, But eventually, I opened my eyes, resigned to my fate. The figure was gone. But I could feel their presence lingering, a shadow that would never truly leave me. I'm still here, trapped in this endless cycle, waiting for the door to open, for some glimpse of hope that will never come. The clock still reads 11:58, its second hand ticking backward, a cruel reminder of the time I will never reclaim. And as I sit here, alone and defeated, I realize the truth: there is no escape. Not from this room, not from this nightmare, and not from the darkness that lurks within us all. I am a prisoner of my own mind, trapped in an endless loop of despair and regret, and I know, deep down, that I will never leave.